How's it going, guys? Welcome back. Hope you're doing well. So today we're gonna go over why I think you should give New Game Plus and New Game Plus Plus a shot. And before we do, some of you may know I do like to do unscripted content, so I will leave the chapters down below for easy navigation. If it does get a little long-winded, this one may. There's a couple key points to discuss, but I think by the end of it, we'll probably at least try New Game Plus, right? At least try it, see what it has to offer, because I think most people in the Khazan community kind of just, and again, I've seen them label it as a kind of the consensus is a quote like victory lap. I disagree, but we'll get into that. And I am also going to overlay some footage in this video, so it is going to be just some clips I've taken from my stream on Twitch. So I do stream because I'm on Twitch. Basically, I just do some new game runs. So the footage that you're going to see here overlaid is going to be some new game footage. I'm going to show my skills, again, as they level up, and my stats before the fights as well. So before we get into exactly why I think we should give New Game Plus a shot, something I did also want to say, because this does kind of bleed in, just tie in to the topic, is the way that you see me play in my videos, specifically with dual wield, this does apply to a certain extent to spear, not as much spear, because the spear doesn't really come online until way later in the game. But I'm not going to get too deep into spear and why that is the way it is, and my gripes and the pros and cons of spear. But for the most part, it's dual wield, but also Greatsword, because Greatsword, the play style of Greatsword, you can really kind of do from the get-go, right? A lot of the stuff you don't need like legendary gear for. You just need a couple of gear sets and you're good to go. But I know that a lot of my dual wield gameplay is pretty flashy, right? There's a lot of Howling Blade activation, right? Parrying attacks, things like that, deafness. Now I want to be very clear, and this is kind of does extend to new players as well, because I don't want new players specifically, right? When they see that type of gameplay, I don't want them to think that it's impossible to achieve that style of gameplay until you get to New Game Plus Plus. That could not be farther from the truth, right? So, and as you can see in these clips, and I do on stream, you can really unlock this playstyle about the middle of the game, right? Not even really in the middle of the game, leaning more towards the beginning of the game, right? So I can show you in my skill tree. Really, as you can see, look, I'm mastery level 70 or 21, right? My stats level 60. For the most part, to play like I do, this is really kind of what you need, right? The only other skills that I would say can 100% complete it, right, is I want the last level of reversal, and I would probably take Breeze Dash, right? I very seldom use Wind Piercer, right? I really don't use it that often. Usually just close the gap. I really don't use Ruthless very much. I really don't use it that much. Dragon Slayer, sure, but really to get the speedy, flashy playstyle, I would want the last tier of reversal, and then probably disciplined action, the second one, and that's it. The second activation of Gust is nice, obviously it's ideal, but minimum you need the second tier to negate damage with Gust. So other than that last tier reversal, and again, if you want to throw in some Breeze Dash, this is what you need, right? Now, the reason why I think that this is important is because, again, I don't want new players to think that the type of gameplay they see is impossible to achieve unless you get into New Game Plus or New Game Plus Plus. Because here's the thing, you can utilize a more dodge-focused playstyle, but You just can't do it for as long, right? So if in New Game Plus and New Game Plus Plus, you have, let's say that you can achieve an infinite combo, right? Let's just say that, especially when you have dual wield and the way that you negate damage, right? With Howling Blade, you can pull off an infinite combo, right? You can combo until your enemy is brutaled or, exhausted, and you can brutal attack, get your stamina back, or you can just keep attacking because normally base, like in New Game, um, with the exception of a few sets down the road, you only have access to this skill, right? This is at base level, this is the only amount of stamina you're going to get back. Later on in New Game, with like the Unending Tragedy set, if you want to specifically use that set, you're going to get a lot more stamina back and dodge stamina cost decrease, which really you can, again, in New Game, you can utilize this playstyle. You just can't do it for as long as you can as if you were playing New Game Plus, New Game Plus Plus, because you don't have the increased stamina capacity and you won't be getting as much stamina back. But again, I reiterate, it's important to note, so again, new players don't dismiss what they see. You can achieve a very fast and dodge heavy playstyle early on. You can build on that. Basically, once you achieve the base playstyle, which you can see here with the skill tree, and then by just utilizing the playstyle in your fights, you can then build on that to basically extend the amount of time that you're attacking, right? Because the thing about New Game Plus, and this is where it bleeds into New Game and New Game Plus Plus, is because I understand that, and myself included, sometimes you miss a brink dodge, right? And you do a normal dodge, or you miss a deafness, right? Or you want to use deafness to close the gap, right? Rather than use it as a brink dodge attack. This is going to use a little bit more stamina. I get it. Again, I'm not perfect either. Sometimes I miss a Howling Blade, sometimes I miss a brink dodge, and it's a normal dodge, etc., and that will use some more stamina. In New Game Plus and New Game Plus Plus, the reason why I think the game is just better in that regard is because it gives you more resources to keep attacking. So you minimize, right, the amount of time that you're just idly waiting for your stamina to regen. And now look, I also understand this is, because I've been thinking on this, I think this is more of an experienced player issue that's noticed. The reason why I say that is because I think that normally new players, right, they're going to spend the majority of their stamina, they're going to spend their stamina bar guarding and dodging rather than attacking. An experienced player, and also someone who's played a lot of New Game Plus, New Game Plus Plus, you get to see and understand how many openings there really are, right? So when you get into New Game Plus and New Game Plus Plus, and or you're a more experienced player, you spend your stamina bar more on attacks than you do dodging and brink guarding. Now with dual wield, your dodging can also be an attack, right? With Howling Blade, Deafness, Reversal, etc. So you can attack and defend at the same time. But I think this can easily be solved also if we had infinite New Game Plus, right? So that way, new players who have played and understand how in-depth and how fast the combat can be don't have to go back to New Game at all, right? Because New Game, as you know, and you'll get later on when you see in New Game, for those new players, as you get on into New Game, you'll see once you get more stamina and more spirit and more resources to attack, you'll start to see when you have a surplus of resources, you don't have to just sit there and idly wait. That being said, you don't have to, quote, like bully bosses, right? That's not, you don't have to stun lock them into oblivion and spend your stamina bar that way. Because it's easy to think, oh, well, that would just be overpowered because I would have all these resources and I could just stun lock them into oblivion and kill them. But you don't have to stun lock them, right? You can have all these resources, but can use it to dodge and attack at the same time, Brink Guard, so that way you can, quote, like bully a boss by just attacking infinitely, right? But you don't have to stun lock them. So that way it's still fair, right? So you can engage with the boss, but you have the stamina, the spirit, the resources to negate damage and attack and capitalize on every opening that you see, right? In New Game, especially again as someone who has played the game for a while, it can be, and I'm not the only one, right? I'm not unique in this way. There's a lot of players who still play the game. You can see in the footage too, there's times when there's clearly an opening, right? I could be attacking, but instead I'm forced to wait for my stamina to regen because I'm spending most of my stamina bar on attacking rather than dodging or brink guarding. Now, the main reason I think that it's really good for players to play New Game Plus and New Game Plus Plus is because, yes, there's some certain rewards, right? Like, you get some certain additional benefits on your gear, certain skill bonuses, damage multipliers, etc. But it allows you to replay the game with the bosses having higher health pool, right? Because if you go back and fight earlier bosses on New Game, you're going to kill them in a couple hits, right? You have insane damage. It's ridiculous. So you want to play the game with all these resources so you can engage fully in a fast-paced playstyle. And again, you're going to have to work for those resources, right, in combat to dodge, brink dodge. You still use your spirit wisely, but because you're going to gain more bonuses of spirit on brink guard or spirit on brink dodge, stamina on brink dodge, right? Because you're going to gain those things, you're going to be able to fight these bosses again and really capitalize on every opening. And it's a lot more fun, the combat, because again, you don't have to wait for your stamina, you don't have to wait for your spirit if you're actively engaging with the boss, right? So that way you can fight them fully, you can capitalize on every opening, and it's, again, they're still on your power level, right? So it's not like 10 hits and they're dead. You can actually have a full fight with them and engage with their mechanics. Now, another thing about New Game Plus, New Game Plus Plus, is you do get, again, the gear pieces are nice, but the main thing, again, is, as I stated, being able to actually fight the bosses again while they're on your power level without having to deliberately nerf yourself, right, to go fight other bosses. Because we want to use the gear we've accumulated. We want to use the skills we've accumulated. Additionally, in New Game Plus and New Game Plus Plus, because, and these are for the newer players, right, because you will have a surplus of resources, or more importantly, you'll have more ways to gain a surplus of resources, it really puts into perspective for the new players how many openings there are to actually attack, right? Because as a new player, as once a new player myself, right, that's exactly how I found it going about the fight, right? So I would fight, but then I would get to a part where I would normally wait for my stamina. I would look down and I would go, "Oh my god, I have like almost full stamina and I have full spirit bar. I don't have to wait for anything. I can just continue attacking." So circling back to the first point I made in the video, you can utilize a playstyle like this, but instead of having to break it up into chunks where I have to wait for my stamina, you can just let it ride, right? You can keep attacking, keep attacking, keep attacking, continue to dodge, negate damage, dodge, brink guard, attack. There's no idle time. So in New Game Plus and New Game Plus Plus, you can continue your playstyle, but instead of taking it into chunks of attacks, you can just let it all bleed together, right? And again, to be clear, you don't have to stun lock bosses and dump your massive stamina bar or dump your massive spirit bar into the boss and just kill them, right? You can let them attack. You can engage with them, right? That's what I think is the most fun about New Game Plus, New Game Plus Plus. So, other than that, guys, really, those are the main things about New Game Plus, New Game Plus Plus that I think players should engage with, because I don't think that it gives you enough incentive in the game, or it doesn't make the incentives of replaying the game in New Game Plus, New Game Plus Plus as apparent. I think that most players once they get their foot in the door of New Game Plus and New Game Plus Plus, once they get their foot in the door and see the evolution of the combat system and how it really shines through once you have those resources, or again, more importantly, the means to maintain your resources throughout the fight. Once players see that, I think then they'll understand. But I think the biggest barrier for players is actually getting them to engage in New Game Plus. Because I think most players, once they complete the game, and especially once they see the main sentiment of the Khazan community, I think those two things put together will just discourage a lot of people from even trying New Game Plus, right? New Game Plus Plus, especially if they use the same play style of the common play style, I should say, of reflection and then just stun locking into oblivion. I genuinely think that the combat system, and the most fun you can get from the game and way you can engage with it is by fighting bosses, allowing them to attack, like let them have their turn, right? Let them play. Um, and that, guys, yeah, that's all I got. I did overlay some footage here again, just to show, um, and I made sure to include my skill tree at the time and my stats, so you can see at that time again, just through the evolution, right? Once I got the majority of skills that I need, still early on in the game, only the second tablet, or the second world area. You can really, for the most part, just start ripping it, right? You can just start playing. Um, yeah. And that, guys, if you have any questions, please let me know in the comments. I'll be happy to answer any, or if you have any points that maybe I should have discussed, or questions that you have about New Game or New Game Plus, be sure to let me know. I'll be happy to answer. And also, again, I'll be streaming too. So if you have any questions, I can answer live for you. I do stream on Twitch, so stop by if you'd like. Other than that, hope you guys enjoy the video, and I'll see you in the next one.